As Matthew said, I'm Stephen Woodhouse. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Land and Property Information. What I wanted to talk to you about today was tell you about our journey with SFIA and what we've done. So I'm going to just do a bit of context around what LPI is, what it does, how it fits, some idea of the objectives, what we were trying to achieve, how and why, and some of the outcomes of those, some of the lessons learnt along the way, some of the things we're doing now, some of the things we plan on doing in the future with SFIA. Happy to have discussions or questions as we go through, or we can leave it all to the end. I really don't mind. It depends how interactive you want to get. Just so to get some context around LPI and what it does and what I do within LPI. So Land and Property Information is a concatenation of organisations over a period of time. But in reality, there is three basic things that it does about a parcel of land or a property, etc. The spatial information, so where it is, its shape, its size, features, things like that. The titling information, so who owns it, what encumbrances or how other people that have interests on it, etc. And the valuation system that is used by rating and taxes, so that's how your rates or your land tax, etc. gets done. And they're the three basic things that LPI does. LPI only deals with information. We gather information, we manage it or do something with it, and we disseminate information. We are an information organisation, and that is all we do. Don't do anything else. And what we were doing is trying to work out where we were going and what we were doing. So I did a strategic plan for IT, and I wanted to turn IT from a traditional IT environment, very stovepiped, etc., into a services organisation. Simon talked about the marketing component and how IBM, etc., does all that market. Well, I wanted us to operate as a service organisation within LPI. So we had to come up with a new strategy. How do we make this organisation digital? How do we make us a service organisation where we provide services that the business consume? We source those services, so we either do that, we have some internal stuff, or we source those services from somewhere else and we become a service broker. And part of doing that set up a vision of what we're going to look like. We had to understand what our current capabilities were. What were our skills that we actually had today? And what were the skills we were going to need in the future? Now, Matthew talked about this morning, asked some questions. What skills do you know you have? What skills do you know you want? Well, that's what we went through, and that's what all this work we use SFIA for to get to, is to what are we going to need in the future, and how are we going to do that? I can't even look at my own slide deck here.
No, just interrupt. Sorry.
I'll talk on that.
No.
Technical glitch here. Thank you. Yes, so we knew we were weak in a number of places in our skills. After doing the baseline work, we identified that we were weak in more than we thought. We also identified we didn't have skills that we knew we were going to need in our future state. And that was the main catalyst. Coupled with that, what happened at the same time, government came out, Public Service Commission came out with this new Employment Act, this new thing that was going to look like the capability frameworks and what it was going to actually do. And instead, all public servants now need, or public sector organisations now need to have these new role descriptors, where historically we had position descriptors and everybody had their own individual position descriptor. Now we were going to have role descriptors that covered numbers of people in the same role, and people would become more mobile and they could move around within organisations or across organisations within the public sector, etc. And the PSC came out with this framework, and these are the soft skills that they had. There's 5 levels within those soft skills, and they said every public servant is going to have a role descriptor, and these soft skills are going to be described in there. But for IT, where is it? I can't see it. Oh, there it is. For IT, they said, we'll bring in these SFIA skills as well, and they came up with some generic role descriptors and put some of those skills in it. Doesn't mean us as an organisation have to stick with them, but we use those as our foundation of how we build up our role descriptors of what we wanted to do. So we had these two drivers for us to go down this SFIA path. PSC driving us from one side, our desire and our strategy of where we wanted to go and how we're going to build our organisation on the other side. Very nice. So what did we do? We engaged with a partner to help us do this, and this is where ADAPTS gets their plug into the whole thing, and well done, Simon. We engaged with a partner to help us down this, and the whole thing, I guess in a nutshell, and I'll pull it apart, but the whole thing about this was some education for the whole of the organisation. The Board of Management, and I sit on the Board of Management, but the Board of Management had to be educated about what this was, why we were doing this, what this actually meant. Our staff had no idea what this was, and the rumour and innuendo that went around this and what this actually was trying to do and what we're going to try and do with it, the initial response I had from our staff when we started to go down this path was I was using this as a tool to get rid of everybody, to sack them all. And that is the furthest from the truth you can get, because it was the exact opposite. We were trying to understand what their skills were, what we needed in the future, and how can we develop that up to achieve what we needed into the future. So there's a couple of things went on there. I'm going to have to look at that one because I can't read that without my glasses. Initially we did some risk workshops, some benefits. We wanted to work out, there's some risks doing this. What are those risks? What are the benefits? How do we mitigate the risks? A whole bunch of work that went on there. Relatively simple work, but we understood, to give us an understanding of what the environment was like and what we're trying to achieve. The communications, and I cannot highlight enough, this is the critical component of making this all come together initially, is the communications. The executive overview, making sure that the executive understood what we were doing, why we were doing it, what is this for. Making sure that our people understood why we were doing it, what we're going to use it for, what it's going to achieve, what SFIA actually is. I had those books that you've got in your bag there, it was version 5, but I had those printed, and every staff member got one of those books to try and educate them a little bit about what SFIA was. So we built up a communication strategy and plan about how we were going to communicate all of this stuff. We built our message house, which is down there. That's the messages we're trying to give. We did this in consultation with a sister organisation of ours, the Office of State Revenue, and I'll talk a little bit more about how the interaction between OSR and us, but OSR and us were trying to do this together as a collaborative piece of work to spread out the knowledge that we're trying to do to try and calm down some of the staff about what was going on. And it wasn't just LPI, it wasn't just OSR, but we're trying to spread it across and give them a little bit of confidence about what was happening. We made some SFIA animations, so some movies. So there was actually some off the SFIA site, but ADAPTS made some for us as well. And we have those up on our internal website for people to go and use. We played those. We interacted with our staff. We had staff meetings. We tried to explain to them what it was, asked as many questions as you want, get comfortable with this. We showed some movies, etc. We undertook some training. So the senior ICT people and we brought some HR people along with us. We did some training, so we did the understanding SFIA and this advanced SFIA, and again OSR and LPI worked collaboratively together with that. So it was senior IT, senior HR people all doing those courses and that training together. We then did some training for our team leaders or our people managers about what it was we're trying to achieve and how we're going to approach it and what it actually meant into the future. We built up some resources. So an internal website where we had the animations, questions and answers, the PDFs of all the documents, frequently asked questions, all of those sorts of things were built up there. We had a generic email address, SFIA at LPI, that people could email to, which I monitored and my team monitored, and we would answer questions for anybody that was asking questions, irrespective of what that question was. And once we got the communication bit done and the education, and there was still a lot of issue around it, there was still a lot of fear. And that's what it was fear. People didn't understand what it was. So we moved into this self-assessment part, which was facilitated by ADAPS. Second plug for you there. It was an online self-assessment component. And people went on and they did their self-assessment based on the whole SFIA framework and where they thought they had skills. We then, after all those self-assessments were done, we don't have the numbers, maybe on the next slide. After all those self-assessments were done, every staff member that participated had a one-on-one interview with a consultant to validate those skills, to talk through those skills, etc. And I'll just point out here, this was not just ICT people. This included project managers out of the business as well. And this included project managers out of the business as well. And we brought those into it to get an understanding for them and give that information back to the business folk. And the whole process was trying to get a baseline of what the skills that we currently had in our organisation was. Each person got a nice SFIA certificate that said these are your skills on this date, and whilst that was nice for them to get, I think there's still a lot of education to go around what that actually means. There's still quite a number of people that says this is my skills. Now that was done 12 months ago or whatever it was done. Now that's not true. That is not their skills today, because I'm hoping their skills have evolved and changed and something's happened. So that is not their skills. That was that point in time, their skills. And that a bit of an education still needs to go on there. But we got out of that some database of at that point in time, this was our skill base. These were the skills at these levels that we believed we had in our organisation. And we knew, or we believe we know, what we needed in the future, and now we had a gap that we could work with. And that, for us, was extremely important. Some of the graphs and stuff, and so you would have seen a lot of this stuff from a much bigger picture in Simon's presentation this morning. But again, if you look down at this bottom one here, again, the what people thought they had and what people ended up validating they had, a bit of a gap, bit of a difference. So people obviously think they have more than reality they have there. I will make a comment with this initial baseline component, and this is not a criticism in any way, but part of what happens here is I've made the observation that people that have a better communication skill, can express them better, can present better, can end up with a higher skill level than the next person who I know has the same skill and experience but can't express that. So this baseline is exactly that. It's just a starting point, and it's just somewhere for us to start from. It's not definitive in any way. What we are going to do, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in this presentation, is over time we'll build it up so we have a much more accurate view of our skill level at any one point in time in our organisation. The whole stakeholder, top 10 skills, stakeholder relationship stuff, Simon talked about all of that this morning. I would also make a comment on what Simon was talking about there, about at the higher level. I get, maybe I'm wrong, but I get the perception from the people I'm talking to that they have a perception that the skills are tied to the hierarchy. I should have, I'm the CIO, I should have all these level 7 skills, and my architect sitting over there, he's in the structure lower than me, so his skills all need to be 5s or 6s. Now that is not true, and it shouldn't be like that. The reality is, my skills need to be in a leadership space, but what do I know about Java development? Nothing. So I don't have any skills there. But I would expect my key Java developer to have 6s or 7s in that space. So there's still a perception by people that their skills are tied to their position in the organisational hierarchy, and that needs to be changed as well. So, our initial learnings, what do we find out? What do we do? 129 people have 131. The reason we didn't get 131 is one person was on maternity leave and one person was on long service leave. So we would have had 100% had they been there, and they have since been done. So not only have they been done, any new people coming into the organisation have been done as well. So we are keeping this up to date and we are keeping track of all of this. At average, the self-assessment is 13.2 skills. I think that lined up with the numbers you were talking about this morning, Simon. After validation, so everybody that did the self-assessment did the validation. I might point out I made this not optional for people. You know, they had to do it, sort of thing. And it came out with an average of 8.2, which again I think is the number that Simon was talking about this morning. So we're average. So some of the analysis, influence levels lower than average, so within our organisation, and again this is tied back to people's perception of hierarchy and how much influence they have or should have, etc., and how it actually works. Tied back to concatenation of organisations, tied back to just some of the way the organisational culture works and a whole bunch of things going on there. So the lack of skills at level 6, setting standards, and this is my comment about where people think and should and where they're being developed, and I would make the comment over time they haven't been developed, so they haven't been given opportunity to actually get and exercise and participate and build these skills. Because as Simon said this morning, the acquisition of knowledge is not what's important, it's the application of this knowledge, these skills, that's really important. The lack of ownership on organisational wide processes, and that was addressed in something we're trying to do with our strategy and how we're trying to move things. So from IT, we're trying to move the whole organisation, we're trying to influence the whole organisational culture. It's a pretty tough gig, but we're trying to move that, and that will then bring in some of this ownership of organisational wide skills. You know, information management. Does that live in IT? Does that live in the business? Where does it live? Who should be doing it? Oh, there's a whole bunch of things that need to be thought through. But in the end, from an organisational perspective, they do need to be addressed, and where do they fit? You know. Now that comment could easily be discarded. Well, we didn't sample the people that were doing some of this stuff because they're not in IT, and that's a fair enough comment. But over time, we'll see how that pans out. The need to create opportunities to develop skills, and I guess that's what we're going to talk about next. Segue into our next bit to talk about. So that was phase one, and at the end of phase one, we had some nice artefacts. We had some database of skills, we've done some communication, we've done some work, etc. But we recognise that we need to keep developing. We need to fill that gap. And part of filling that gap is development of our staff, but it was also a restructure. We're restructuring ICT because we needed to get a new structure from this traditional stovepipe to a flatter, more streamlined, that allowed for the movement from having a whole bunch of system administrators there playing with bits of tin to we're consuming a service out of AWS. I still need system administrators, I still need things to happen there, but I don't need people to play with bits of tin anymore. So there's that movement of skills from one place to another, or enhancing some skills and not necessarily worrying about others. So we needed to do that. Part of what also is going on here is within DFSI, so LPI is part of that DFSI cluster, the performance management component was coming into play. So we sort of made a decision that we've got to bring performance management in, we've got to have a bit of a carrot and a stick here. We have to do it, but let's make people want to participate in this. So we've tied our next phase of our SFIA journey in with performance management. So we're going to do a couple of things here, and we're saying we are saying that your skills development is part of your performance agreement with us, and that's what we're going to do. So to do that, we've had to train some of our internal staff to be assessors, to be able to understand what's going on there. I've got a spreadsheet that I have where I have the skills predominantly around project managers, because I've got to go out and get contract project managers. So I have all those skills in there. I've tied dollar values to the levels, so there's skills in those levels. And when I have my conversation with the recruiters, I want to pay X number of days because I need these skills. If they've got a person that has much higher skills, that's wonderful, but I'm only going to pay for the skills that I want to consume. So now I have arguments with recruiters about the value of X number of dollars a day for these people because I only want to pay for skills, etc. As I said, we assess and validate new starters, new people are coming into the organisation, adds to our baseline, also gives us a much better understanding of where our skills are. We've created and creating some CBT modules, and I guess we'll talk about this bit, which is what we're doing now, and that's the communities of practice. We made the decision that we needed to develop our staff. We need to have a place where people can apply or get the opportunity to apply their learning. So they may have done a course, they may have done something at university, but they have no practical application of that skill. So we're creating communities of practice where our senior people can mentor and give the junior people opportunity to develop those skills. So those senior people are the ones we've trained as assessors, but they're also the mentors, and they're going to help these younger people out. We've created a nice website where people can participate. There will be resources there for them to use. There will be discussion boards. There'll be things up there for the community of practice to actually work with. The senior people, so we've got one of these for strategy and architecture. We base it at the highest level in SFIA 5, but at the highest level. So there's one for strategy and architecture. The mentor, the lead mentor in that is our enterprise architect, and he will help other people that want to get into architecture or do a small part of architecture as their current role. And they may have been assessed down at level 4 or something like that, and they want to move up. So they need to get that opportunity. The mentor can help them get that opportunity. We have made the decision to have these people be able to assess, because what we want to try and do is allow these staff to be reassessed over time. And we're putting in a fairly stringent way of making that happen. But in the end, what they will do is they have the opportunity to be reassessed, which ties back to their performance management, their performance contract with us, of what they're going to do. So to get a reassessment, if I want to get reassessed on something, I would have to have my manager support that reassessment to say, yes, this person is doing these things that they're saying they're doing. The person needs to create a little presentation, a little portfolio that can justify or collaborate what they've been doing and present that to the assessors. And I also made the decision I'm going to have 2 assessors sit there. One's going to assess what's actually going on, and the other ones can do that partly, but they're also assessing the whole process and making sure the process is actually working as well. Because I want a level of confidence that my database of my skills is as close to as accurate as I can get it. So over time, it will build up that accuracy. Because my expectation is, as we move from what we are today to what we'll be as a service business in the future, the skills are all going to change. And we need to be able to measure that, we need to be able to monitor that, we need to be able to understand where we're lacking and what we need to do to achieve that. So part of this, we've made up, again, CBT, there's some online training stuff that goes up there for the assessors, for the people participating. People will get continuing development points for participating, so they'll get some points for the online questions and answers, they'll get some points for writing a white paper, they'll get points for attending a conference, something like this, etc. As part of their performance agreements, they will have to get X number of points. And it's going to be different because people will get different points for different things. So someone at the bottom of the organisation will actually have a small number, which they could probably accrue just by asking questions on them. People, my enterprise architect is going to have a much larger number, and he's going to have to get his points by writing white papers, participating, doing presentations, all of those sorts of things. Or mentoring, he might get points for mentoring people. You know? If he's successfully mentoring people, he's going to get some recognition and points for doing that. So that's what we're doing in this community of practice. So we've set up 4 communities of practice, again in SFIA 5 of those 4 high-level ones that are of interest to us. And that's all going live, and we're actually starting to do all of that now. And we'll see, I guess, over time, because we haven't brought the performance management bit in just yet, that happens next month. We'll see how that all ties together with any luck. see what happens. Some of the new journeys into the future. As I said right at the start, we brought HR along with us to all the training and the stuff to start with. We interacted with OSR. So into the future, further integration with the HR processes. So definitely, PSC said we've got to have new role descriptors. We're doing our restructure, which starts, it's all been signed off now. We start recruiting next month. All those role descriptors will go out with a SFIA component to it. And then the development component, part of my performance, part of our whole development strategy. And some of the stuff that was talked about this morning and what came to my mind was we spend, as an organisation, probably 80% of our resource and effort maintaining BAU and only 20% of our time and effort going forward with something, unless there is a change, something changes that changes that. Our restructure, our PSC, are probably our biggest changes. This is where we want to move to. So we're putting more effort into the change component than the BAU component. But the development and the career planning is what this is driving for all our staff. That's the message we give them. This is not about getting rid of them or beating them up or doing anything. This is about their personal development, their career planning. And I acknowledge their career may not be in this organisation. It may be outside this organisation. But from a public sector perspective, that now should be transportable across any organisation, whether they're in LPI or OSR or anywhere else. It should be transportable because it all should be the same. You know, we should be able to measure it. The project management component, as I've already said, I have ongoing discussion with recruiters because I bring in project management to do most of that. But having project managers that can sit down when they're building up their work breakdown structures and say, I need these resources, be able to go to our database and say, you haven't got those resources, I'll go outside and get them, or yes you have, where are they? And now it becomes a scheduling component. That whole getting the project managers to use the skills that they know we've got. So having some confidence in that skills database. Expansion with, so as I said, the work we've done with OSR was hinged on our intent to share resources or to share opportunities. So if OSR needed a skill set that we had, we were hoping we could have this opportunity where we could share that over, or we had some staff that we wanted to develop in a space that we weren't doing anything in, but OSR were, that we could get that interaction to happen and we could get some sharing, and the other way around as well, so OSR does. OSR again is in the DFSI cluster, so sort of sister organisations. We want to expand our community of practices. We want to integrate, get more business people involved in a lot of this stuff. Yeah? Project management isn't an IT skill, it's a across the board skill, as is information management, as is a whole bunch of things. They're not confined to IT. And we want to expand this across the organisation and get all input and participation from a whole bunch of other people. We want to share some capabilities. So we'll see how this evolves and what actually goes on there, but that's the intent of what we want to do. We're reaching the end. I just want to, I guess, make some other comments about what was talked about this morning. Is the whole process going on here. If you don't have a driver to make something happen, I think you're going to find it hard to get it going. You've got to have some influencing factor, some disruptor happening to make people want to participate in this. The critical component of doing all this is the communication, the education, and even after everything we have done, I still have people that are fearful and believe I am doing this to get rid of them. This is not widely used, but will become much more widely used at the moment. And I want to see the recruiters picking it up and doing a whole bunch more work there. And I want to see, if the PSC comment around people becoming portable because of this and because of what they've done with their framework is to really come to reality, we need to change, in the public sector at least, some of the way we do things to make this board portable, because this describes it is subjective, but it describes people's experiences and skills. Anyway, we've got a few more minutes for questions or discussion if you want. Happy to do that if people want to participate.
How are you going to measure that it's successful?
Excellent question. How do you measure? And at the moment I can't come up with a definitive measure, but I can come up with some soft measures about how successful it is. And that is from the skills that we've got and what we evolve to, so how many skills happen and what it develops in, how much staff retention I have, so do we become a preferred place to actually work because it's acknowledged that we have the development and career planning there. If I'm a service provider, do I have the skills to meet my service commitments properly?
Do you do customer satisfaction monitoring now?
We do, not as well as we probably should, but we do. I guess part of that is, again, staff's fearfulness of doing that, because often when you do that, people treat that as a way of beating you up. You know?
Oh, right.
You're handing them a stick. You're handing them a stick, they're going to use it to whack you with. So people are fearful of that. On the other side of that, with that you improve, and with that becomes your marketing ploy of how you're actually providing these services and what you're actually doing. You know? So that satisfaction bit goes hand in hand with that. So there is some evolution and learning to go on there. But I'm happy for people to try and tell me or give me some really hard figures to come up with of how to actually measure what's going on here, because I can't figure it out just yet.
Hi, I am a recruiter, and I'm here today to learn more about. I've been following SFIA for quite a few years, and I'm all for it, whole language, so I think it'll help all of us. You mentioned that you would like recruiters to do more and get more involved. In what aspects?
Yep. So I guess a couple of things happen when I contact recruiters, because I want a project manager, say, and I say these are the SFIA skills and levels I want. A couple of things happen. They want to spell SFIA with a PH. They have no idea what SFIA is, and they cannot send me any resumes that actually even explain it whatsoever. So my expectation, what I would expect recruiters to be doing, is to be able to say, here's some candidates matched against your SFIA skills, and this is where they are, and they've been validated. And there's people out there that validate it, apps do it, ACS does it, a whole bunch of people can give you some level of validation. Over time, what I would expect to see is to be able to have some confidence in that the recruiters or somebody can give me a level of confidence that what they're saying are their skill level is accurate and true. Now that's the more technical side. There's obviously the soft side as well. They can be the best Unix sysadmin in the world. If they can't work in a team, obviously that's a problem as well. So that soft side comes into it as well.
Would you like us to push more of the assessment?
Yes?
Amongst the candidate community?
By all means. I think that is... It would. I mean, if they're a member of the ACS, they can actually do it online for free, or they could spend some money and do it with other people. But I think that is a key component. If the PSC is saying we've got to use these role descriptors with these skills in it, why don't we tie it to the contractors we're getting in as well? We have to understand that, because I have a database that says, for my vision of what I want to achieve, I need these skills.
How did you handle the conversation between the self-assessment outcome and the validated outcome?
Different people, different ways of doing that. And you are right that there were some people that did a self-assessment with, I don't know, I think they ended up with more than 20 skills, and went into that validation component and wanted to argue black and blue with these two guys about what skills they actually had and what they should get. And that came down to an education and a misunderstanding of what it is. If you look at the PSC role descriptors or our role descriptors, they don't have, 4 is the average number of SFIA skills. Some of them have 5 and some of them have 3, but 4 is the average number of SFIA skills. The reality is, saying I've got 20 SFIA skills, it doesn't quite gel, it doesn't quite work. I think I ended up with 6. I did it as well, and Simon did mine, and I think my validation, my self-assessment came up at 6 or 7, and I ended up with 6 or 7. You've got to be a little bit realistic about it. If I did, Java development 10 years ago, and I've not touched it since, it's not a skill. So having that conversation, most people could accept that. Some people couldn't accept that. In the end, we had to agree to disagree, but we'll go from there. This guy here wants to ask a question if you want to think about it.
You mentioned targeting the specific skills you want from the market. So you go out for contractors, whatever your target's to be. You're only prepared to pay for those skills. Do you see a danger there that that's going to drive the market towards having narrowly skilled people because that's what the customer wants?
There's going to be a shift or a correction in the rates that are being charged, etc. What I'm saying is, if I need a project manager and I want them to manage this project and I'm expecting SFIA levels 5, I put a value to that. Now, and I interviewed 4 yesterday, and one of them I would have put at a 7. He was a program manager, but my requirement is for a 5. That's all I'm willing to pay. If he wants to come on at that rate, wonderful. If he doesn't, that's fine. But I intend to pay for what I need, not what the recruiter wants to give me or what that person thinks they're worth. And he's worth what he's asking for. Don't get me wrong, he was very, very good. But it's not what I want, so it's not what I'm willing to pay for. And then, as I said, this whole soft side as well comes into it as well. They can be, if he was the best program manager in the world, that's fine. If he couldn't talk to people, obviously we couldn't be program manager, but it becomes a problem. So the soft side comes in as well. So, but will it narrow the market? I don't think it will narrow the market, but it's certainly going to create a shift in the rates and how people set rates, etc. Questions going all over the place now.
Thanks for the presentation, it's really interesting. What does the business case look like when you presented it to your senior managers? Like, generally, it's either more revenue or greater efficiency, which means
Sure.
either lower operational costs, I guess, which sometimes translates into headcount reduction. That's probably why people are worried.
Sure.
But, you obviously need to secure funds to allocate time and internal resources, engage vendors and so on to do this work over a period of time, and then you've got to produce some return on that investment. So what is that return on the investment? Surely you would have got the business case up if you hadn't had a measure there of your return on investment.
Sure. So,
That's why I'm here.
so as I said, a couple of things happened that were really advantageous for us. PSC brought this stuff in and said this had to happen, and that became mandatory. You had to do that. So that was a really great driver for us. The other was my strategy, and as I said, there needs to be a disruptor. And the strategy that the board of management signed off on, this is what they wanted to achieve. Digital organisation, to a services IT. To achieve that, some things had to happen. And that became my argument of, the core argument of the business case of what we're going to do. To give them a little bit of confidence, we broke it up into a number of phases, because if they lost confidence after a phase or whatever, we could back out of it and we've not spent a whole bunch of money. So we broke it up into the phase 1, which is the initial bit, setting the scene. Phase 2, which we've sort of just come to the end on, with this community of practice stuff, and then phase 3, which is the integration into HR, project management and all those sorts of things. And that gave them a level of confidence that if they thought in the end I was not telling them the truth or they weren't happy with it, they could get out of it. But the whole business case was hinged around the strategy which they'd signed off. To achieve that strategy, we have to do this. We have to build the foundational components. And that's what my comment about the disruptor. You need something that drives what this is. To walk in and say, oh, we're going to do SFIA now, and it's going to cost money, it's going to cost resources, it's going to create disruption. Why do it will be the first question you're going to get. Got to have something. And they were the two things that drove us.
Can I just ask, to me that sounds like products of the activity rather than the benefit of the activity.
Well,
So community of practice is an outcome or a product of the activity. It's not the actual return on the investment.
Correct. The return on the investment is the skills, the level of skills and the experience you have in the people, and that then is really the services you provide. Can I provide the services that they actually want? To provide those services, I have to work my way all the way back to that very first point. But you are right. As I said, a hard number to measure this is really quite hard, but the benefit is the services they get at the end. and in our ability to provide those services.
I think it's also the evidence-based data that you now have in terms of targeted skills development that then flows into, quality service delivery.
Sure. You comment about the reduced headcount. Well, that's actually true. We went from 125 to 111. They weren't all people. There were a whole bunch of vacancies and stuff there. On the floor today, I think I've got 98 or 99 or something. But technically, the headcount did shrink. But our whole structure, we restructured ICT, and the whole time's up. But the whole structure has changed. So the whole bunch of things going on there. Happy to talk to folk afterwards or whatever, if you like. But the lady here's telling me my time's up, so I've got to go. Thank you very much.